Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to a workshop for using gospel videos on your mobile. While we're kind of settling in, let me get a show of hands. How many of you are using gospel videos on your mobile devices? One of you? No, there's a few out there. That's good. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to join with just about everybody else who's got up to the microphone and say, I am not an expert. It seems to be the theme of this conference. But I'm going to try to give a few tips, a few ideas, throw them out, and then try to give a lot of time for you guys to share some of your tips on using gospel videos on your mobile, because I'm sure there's a wealth of information out there that's much greater than what I know. So I'm going to deviate. Well, first of all, let me just introduce myself. I'm Dave Hudson. We're with Create International, organization that's been around for about 29 years, and we have 7 centers around the world. My wife Wendy and I, we direct the center in Taipei, Taiwan. And Steve over here is the director of our Create mobile team. And we have, as I said, we have teams around the world. We make contextualized evangelistic films for unreached people groups. And those take various forms. Sometimes they're live action films. In Taiwan, we do a lot of animated films. We highly contextualize, so I'm going to talk, because of that, we're going to talk a little bit about contextualization and what that means. When a person sees a film in their own language, we've heard this come up many times, seeing something in your own language, it makes a difference, okay? We all agree on that. But what is language? Language goes beyond just the spoken word. And so I want to encourage those of you out there who are making films that are gospel-oriented content, don't just think about the language, the spoken word, but think about contextualizing other forms of communication that are within the video that you're presenting. My wife and I lived in mainland China for 10 years working on a church planting team. So I do speak Mandarin Chinese. 有没有人在这里会讲国语? Wow, 没有一个人在后面，太好了. All right, so yeah, just to let you know, I do speak the language. So many expressions in Chinese, if you analyze a language, you look at what's important to them, they'll generally have a lot of words for something. And in Chinese, there's a lot of words that relate to Chinese food. And you know that Chinese food is world famous. I mean, just everyday words like, for example, to suffer harm is to 吃苦, which means to eat bitterness. When somebody's jealous, it's eating vinegar, right? So you have a lot of these words that relate to food because food is very important. There's been lots of famines throughout Chinese history, and that has affected the language. So language and culture are related. Some of you have heard the stories about some of the tribes up in the Arctic Circle that have 40 to 50 different words for snow, right? It's probably something you always end up studying in Linguistics 101. But this is important. This is important for us to take into consideration when we're designing content, is that language and culture are inseparable. Different areas of contextualization that we need to look at. There's some obvious ones. We've mentioned language, clothing, architecture. What do the buildings look like? Food, art, looking at festivals. These are all the things in a culture that are going to obviously be different than our own culture, right? We probably all, if we celebrate Christmas, we probably all celebrate Christmas in a different way from different cultures. But there's less obvious areas of contextualization, such as worldview. How do the people think? How do they perceive their world? A good example is in the West, we generally go from specific to general, right? My address that I grew up at is 9739 Gunn Avenue, the number, the street, the city, the country, blah, blah, blah. In Asia, it's the opposite. You start with the country, then you drill down to the specific location. So there's different ways of thinking that language affects. You also have time orientation, personal space, perception of beauty. What is beautiful? What is not beautiful? We think of we might want to include a beautiful picture of some scene in our film which in their culture may not be beautiful, may not be perceived that way. So we really need to step back and not just translate something from one language to another using words, but also think about visuals, how the people perceive beauty. How do they categorize things? This is a real interesting area of contextualization. Some cultures, we're into categorizing, again, from general to specific. The culture that my wife and I worked with, they categorized the opposite way. So there was no general word for certain kinds of animals. You just gave specific animals as examples, right? No word for cow. You had to say this kind of cow and that kind of cow and things like that, right? And then story structure. This is a very important issue that we need to look at. Are we writing Western story sculpture, Western story structural content and then trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? Let's look at how they tell stories. All right, so yeah, contextualization, very important. And having these devices on a mobile phone, one of the things that we're known for in YWAM is that we send out a lot of short-term teams, right? And a short-term team can really be way more effective if they're equipped with gospel videos on their mobile device that share the truth, not only in the target language, but also using those elements of culture. So here's a quick testimony from a Brazilian team that went to India and found out when they arrived at the airport that their outreach was canceled. What do you do? Here's what they did.
Então eu fiquei sabendo com a minha equipe que a gente viria para a Índia.
Me senti frustrada, porque eu não sabia falar o inglês e tampouco o hindi.
E ainda a dificuldade de não poder apresentar dança, apresentar teatro com tanta liberdade na rua. Eu falei, agora, o que eu vou fazer?
Nós buscamos outras estratégias, então nos deram a ideia de usar MP4 com filmes em hindi.
Através do MP4, nós conseguimos levar a palavra do Senhor.
Quando nós chegamos na casa para visitar e levar o filme para a pessoa ver, eles ficaram maravilhados em poder ver um filme na língua deles que falava sobre Jesus.
E vi como essa estratégia foi boa, de ter um filme na língua deles, onde eles pudessem entender melhor o que nós queríamos passar.
Tiveram um bom resultado, porque as pessoas que assistiram o filme entenderam a mensagem e aceitaram a Cristo como Salvador. E a equipe ficou muito surpreendida mesmo, entusiasmada pelo aquilo que Deus fez.
So one of the things that we've noticed, we encourage people when they use our films to combine these videos with human interaction. It's great to send stuff, people are going to see videos online, but when you combine human interaction with the videos, you have a real strong, you're showing not just a video, but also that you care about the person. So let's look at a couple of tips that I have, and then I'd like to open it up for everyone else to share some tips that they've had sharing mobile content, mobile video content. First of all, be prepared. I don't like to depend on the internet when I'm out because you really never know what it's going to be like. So try to have content preloaded on your phone. That's always a good idea, or your iPad. And I loved the testimony that was just shared about having those SD cards. I'm so glad that we don't have to hand out DVDs anymore. We had the hardest time finding DVD authoring software, so it's SD cards are great. Show dynamic content. We personally feel that animation is sends a real strong message to a people group because we can include the people group's own style of art in that animation, and that gives them that extra connection of culture. So they'll look at the way that our characters are drawn. And say, wow, this is me. This is my culture. God loves me. He loves my culture. And that kind of connection we have found to be really dynamic. We just got a testimony from one of our recent films that we did for a people group in China. And this woman's been taking one of our videos to the villages. And the animation that we did explains the gospel in a very clear visual way from creation to Christ. And that we just got an email just the other day that she's had several people come to Christ watching the film. And it's exciting when we hear that. But a lot of times it's, live action films are great. Create does a lot of them. Sometimes animation will just grab your attention in a special way. So do something dynamic. Shorter films we're finding are better. That's come up several times in the conference. We recently did a film for our own nearby people group, the Taiwanese in Taiwan. It was a 25-minute film, but we decided to make it somewhat episodic so that we could divide it up. We put 2 cliffhangers in the film so we could divide it up into 10-minute segments. And we have people going out to shops and shopkeepers and say, hey, you want to watch a film? 10 minutes. They watch the film. It ends on a cliffhanger. I'll come back next week, show you the rest of it. And then we just continue doing that. But it gives people also an invitation to come back if you're showing something that's kind of in a serial form. Also find a good environment. This seems obvious, but have you ever tried to show somebody a video in bright sunlight? It doesn't work too well. Or when there's lots of stuff going on. We live in Asia, so there's a constant noise. So try to find a quiet place. Use earbuds, headphones if you can. Also very important, trust the Holy Spirit. Don't force people because we don't want to do God's work, right? It's the Holy Spirit's job to convict people of sin and draw them to Jesus. We're just bringing the information, right? And we should see our role very clearly in that. And then finally, we've heard this come up many times, leverage social media. This is something we're doing more and more of. When we do a film now, like this one we did in Taiwan, we set up a Facebook page for it. The lead actress in the film is managing the page. So if someone sees the film, they can communicate with, the girl in the film. We also have a Line group. Line is the Taiwanese version of WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegraph, whatever. So, yeah, those are all things that we've learned. There's probably a lot more, but I'd like to hear from you guys. So Steve's going to go around with the mic. Just think about what tips what things you've noticed as you're using media on your mobile devices. What have you found that's helpful that you might think would be great to share with all of us as a group?
I see that hand.
Just raise your hand and yeah.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned just the shortness of clips, and we did some research into this in YouTube. If you have identical clip, but one is 1 minute and 59 seconds, exactly the same clip with 2 extra seconds on it, 2 minutes and 1 second, the drop-off rate in doing A/B testing with that on YouTube is 34%.
Wow.
So Christians don't typically make short media, unfortunately, and this is where Vogue is in need of short media. Most people want to fit the Old Testament in there and the New Testament as well, and because the agencies that fund us want to see a whole gospel presentation, and yet people don't have that much time. But I just want to encourage you guys to make short media sub 2 minutes.
Yeah, consider if you do have a longer content, consider breaking it up and make a playlist.
When you're working with pastors, they always want to put their 1-hour sermon up without any other visuals.
Anybody else?
Someone else?
Great. Back here, Steve, in the back.
I'm going to wander around like a ghost in Pac-Man.
Whenever possible, do at least some market testing. We recently did a translation, a dubbing of the Lost Coin in Urdu, and although we had already used it without complaint for several dialects of Arabic, the Urdu felt that there were a couple of items that needed to be changed. So we had to black out the area around someone's hand, for example.
Right.
And we also, as they were praising the Lord, we had to black out the bottom half of them because they were said to be moving sinuously as they were worshiping. So we had to block that out, and then it was acceptable.
Yeah. How did you block it out?
We had to, we tried different things, but we ended up with black fog.
Right.
And then making the hand just the focus of the whole screen as opposed to
Sure.
and then blocking off, kind of making a halo effect around the person worshiping
One of the advantages to doing an animated production is that we can actually go back in and re-edit the content depending on what people group we're doing it for. So
Have the option to reshoot because it was done a long time ago.
yeah. Okay, I think was there a hand over here? No. Anyone else? There's a fly buzzing around my head here.
Another thing you can do is make videos that have no audio, that just are images, and that way you can use them in many different languages, and you can adapt them to whatever situation you're in. The other thing is when we made My Last Day, which was Japanese anime, we felt like, here we have the Jesus film audio in almost 1,500 languages. So I told Barry Cook, I said, Barry, you can change the images, you can change the music, you can change the storyline, but you can't change the audio track. Because we already have the audio track of the book of Luke in, at that time, 1,400 languages. So because we stuck to the audio track with all these translations, now we could quickly put that film, and now today that one film is already in 150 some languages, just because we stuck to the audio track, and also is much cheaper. Yeah. So when you're making films, if your goal is to cover more than just one language and you're thinking globally or regionally, it's a good idea to think about, what are the translation implications? Because you're going to spend thousands and maybe millions of dollars on translation if you're not careful, if it's a big film. And thinking about that strategically ahead of time is important.
Yeah, that's true. For sure. Years ago, we did a project at Create. We did a picture book that uses, it has 40 illustrations of the story from creation to Christ, done in an art style Tibetan Buddhist paintings. It took 3 years to do these hand-painted drawings. But when we did it, we decided to do it based on Global Recordings Network's recordings that already existed. So we can distribute this with a DVD that contains just about any language we want to. Same principle, yeah. Over here.
Okay, I guess one thing, I'm more the end user, but one thing for sure is that when you're thinking about making it, don't worry so much about how it's going to look on a screen like this. When you're doing the editing booth and everything like that, what it looks like on your 60-inch screen or whatever. You saw the guys in India there. What are they looking at it on? Yeah. It's that tiny little screen, and then the audio, they say it's 80% of video is audio. For a mobile phone, if you can't hear it, it goes to here, and all that work you did on the video goes to waste. So make sure the audio is as good as possible, and if not, bring little extra portable speakers, Bluetooth speakers, and things like that.
Yeah, that's true. As film directors, we often want to make our films look like Hollywood productions on big screens, but we do have to be aware of how they appear on small screens. Yeah.
Another area that we've been focusing on is to make sure we're covering at least the 4 basic worldviews: shame and honor, fear and power, defilement and purity, guilt and righteousness. And I was talking to my NAV friend about the incredible impact we've had to Magdalena, and he said, I think the reason why is you've covered all 4 of those paradigms. Wow. So we're finding as we are intentionally making sure that we're talking about those 4 paradigms, that's made a huge difference in people understanding. He would go on and say he feels like I'm quoting Nabil Jabbour here with Navigators, he feels like we're preaching a truncated gospel because we're only normally talking about guilt and righteousness, and we're not talking about the other paradigms that Jesus also came to deal with.
Yeah, that's
so
right. Being
intentional. So we've started to make films that talk about shame and honor, that talk about defilement, purity, these other issues as well.
Right. Yeah, that's very important. Okay, I think one more question. Anybody? One more comment, tip? You're standing. Okay, go ahead.
I'm coming.
in communication, we found out that if you can cross media, being not only on the mobile phone, of course. We started off, and we're still in broadcasting by national TV and private TV stations in Francophone Africa. But we try to do more by starting a whole new movement. For instance, in the AIDS prevention, we started the Amour pour la vie movement. So everybody wants to be part of a winning team. And Amour pour la vie is love for life, for sure. It's a winning team because everybody wants to stay alive and want to keep friends and family alive. So that's a winning team. Everybody wants to be part of that movement. And I think that's part of what we should be doing. What we have done, and that has been one of the factors that we have such a high impact in the AIDS prevention in the Francophone countries. So if you can find out what kind of movement you can start, we saw that happening in Holland, and we're just copying that by the women movement. It started off with a TV program. They changed, they moved it into a movement, a women movement with coffee mornings and so on and so on. And even national gatherings a couple of times a year. So if you can widen your message from even phone or whatever you are on to a movement that everybody will want to be part of it, then you're really successful. So that's what I would aim if possible. And if you can use many different media, from radio, TV, to even mobile, whatever you are on, you can get grip on, even in a crew as well. Then I think your impact will be much wider than what you have now.
That's good.
Maybe I just can mention in the TV and video production, or even feature film production, if you can get in any kind of emotion, you saw a couple of tears the other day, yesterday I think it was, yeah, then you're touching hearts. Because that speaks. If people get touched by a message or something happening, and you can give answers to hard problems, I mean, really, yeah, already, for sure, that's felt need, and you can give real need answers to them, I mean, getting in peace with God, then I think we will get there, yeah. So, thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steve now for the rest of the time. Steve's going to talk about mobile video resources, of
Thank
which
you,
there are
Dave.
many.
Dave's a bit taller than me. We're very excited to be offering a website that we're calling indigitube.tv. Of course, the indigi is for indigenous. So it's indigenous television. It's also intelligent television. All the films are about Jesus. We're trying to share the gospel with people in a variety of different cultures and languages. They're very culturally specific for each one of these groups. And it's very searchable. You go on there, you can look at maybe the country where you're going to do outreach, then maybe a language or a region or a people group, and then you might find a number of different resources there. And it's not just a means by which we as a ministry provide the films that we make. We've also invited anyone else in the world, some of whom may be in this room, if you have made an indigenous gospel film of any size, be it live action or animation, we would like to know about it, because we would also love to be hosting your film and promoting it. So it's an opportunity for you. If you've made some things, please by all means let us know that you've made it so that we could also promote it. For example, I would say a lot of the content that you'll find on IndigiTube these days is the Prophet Story, which is an animated series. Yeah, here it comes. Yeah, there's a graphic in here for it, I'm sure. And those folks, God bless them, they have been translating the Prophet Story into so many different languages that we have been very delighted to be able to share that with everyone. So please come and check that out. We also have the brand new Create International app. In many ways, it serves the function of the indigitube.tv, but now from your mobile phone. So obviously, that's going to be increasingly more popular as we know that people are more on their mobile phones today than on websites via their laptops. So you can also go there, and again, it's ability that you can find these gospel films on there and search it in various things. We also have gospel art that's also available through this app. So I always forget, I confess, I'm a filmmaker, so I tend to think of Create International as being this great ministry providing indigenous gospel films. But that would be unfair to my colleagues who have been creating art and using art to also promote Jesus to the world. And I was grateful to Dave for sharing the fantastic example of the Tibetan art that we've used. So there's definitely examples of things that you do there. One of my absolute favorite things that Create International has ever done, and I had zero to do with it, we had a YWAM discipleship training school in Thailand, and they wanted to go to India, so they made a coloring book in an indigenous Indian style, focused on Hindus of northern India. And the idea was that young children could sit with the crayons which were provided, or maybe colored pencils, and they could color in the story as some storyteller in a oral Bible-telling type tradition shared the story with them. Well, it also could be a story that was recorded to an MP3. So, wow. And then, of course, the minute that the kids, being from this oral tradition, heard the story and colored the coloring book, then they could rush home and share the coloring book with their parents and, of course, verbatim be able to tell the exact same story that they had heard. So, wow, I just love that. And we also have something on this app as well, which is unreached people group prayer videos. As a ministry, we've made a number of these over the years, but we used to charge people to have them, and now we're making them available to everyone for free. So go to the app, see if your people group that you love and would like to have more prayer for them, see if it's there, and then you can download it for free and use it forever. Or until they're reached, and then we all go to heaven. Also want to just give a shout out to the Jesus Film Project app. If you don't have this on your mobile phone, you can download it. And as Jim Green has mentioned, the over 1,500 different versions of the Jesus film can be made available to you in all of these multiple languages. Not only the Jesus film, but Magdalena. There's also short films that are being offered there. And last time I checked, I think some of our Create content was even available through this website. And we're going to give Jim an opportunity to give a shout out about that momentarily. But it is available through iTunes, Google Play, and yeah. So please do that as well. Is anyone in the room working with the Colo World app, folks? Yeah, okay, so there's a few. Good. We're going to give you an opportunity to perhaps say something about that momentarily as well. This is a great app as well. If you're looking for content, you can go there. And we love these guys. We've enjoyed working with them. They are also offering audio Bibles. The Jesus film is also available on that, and a number of related content. You can create playlists on there and then share those for study purposes or outreach with oral and literate people of the world. So that is an absolutely fantastic map, and I love how they you can do the search by flags on that one. And then Vogue. Most of you were here this morning hearing about Vogue. That was this morning, right, Dave? I was not present. Thanks, Dave. But it's I missed this great presentation about this, but we did want to mention it because this app definitely looks to be something with a really powerful impact. So please check that out for yourself. This one I'm more familiar with, the Global Short Film Network. Absolutely fantastic organization providing short films. Some of them may or may not be evangelistic per se, but you might find that they're wonderful tools for creating conversations as a form of pre-evangelism, so we can't say enough good things about them. Both Dave and I, in various Create training opportunities, have used Global Short Film Network films that we've downloaded. They come complete with questions and discussion points, so that is an absolutely fantastic tool. And I think part of what makes it so great is that they've done some of the homework of providing you with the discussion questions that you can use in your conversation group. Dave, for example, was telling me how they have a outreach there in Taipei where they have like an English conversation cafe, and they were able to download a number of these films and share them with Taiwanese-speaking people of Taipei and generated great conversations that way. For web evangelism, our ministry, we're probably not alone in having done this, but we have created 3 websites, also available obviously from your mobile. And these, in fact, is he here? No, he's out of the room at the moment. Deepak, if he were here, God bless him, really helped us with the Ashram of Light. But these are websites that are focused. Lotus of Life for the Buddhists, Kalamatula for the Muslims, and Ashram of Light for Hindus. Ashram of Light, for example, is entirely in Hindi. One of the ideas that we've had recently is if we make a film for a Hindu group, that we could create its own splash page that would be an introduction or a portal by which they could enter into the Ashram of Light website. So, for example, you might have Ashram of Light /Kachi, which is a film I made. Well, you would go there, you would see some content from that film to remind you that it was related to that film, but then it's giving you the opportunity then to go to the various links so that you could learn more about Jesus in the Hindi language from that site. Wow, I mean, for web evangelism, I lost my voice there for a minute. It's really, gosh, yeah, I can't encourage you enough to check that out for yourself. It's going to be great. So now we're going to take a few minutes. We've got some time left. I'd like to start with Jim, though, because I promised Jim that if he wanted to say something about the Jesus Film Project app that he could. So we'll start there.
Yeah, I don't know if you can bring up the app there.
You like me to go back to that?
On the screen, just to point out that if you go down at the bottom there, you'll see right in the middle the symbol in the middle panel. No, yeah. If you push on that, it'll bring up a map of the world, and you can go to any country in the world, and then when you push on that country, it'll bring up all the languages that are available in that country. And if you push on any specific language, it'll then bring up all of the films that are available in that language, in that country. And either you can download them, so when you're where there's no network, it's already on your device, or you can share them with others, or you can watch them. So that's something you need to be aware of. Also on the bottom of the app are some videos which give people creative ideas of how to use it effectively. And then in addition, some may not know that we have added the Gospel of John recently, which is also on there besides the Gospel of Luke. And then there's several animation films on there. We did one with Spain that's an animation series that's not showing on the screen called File Zero, really targeted for atheistic students. And then My Last Day, which is Japanese anime. You know, a lot of people will watch a film just because of the genre it is. If you tell a lot of young people, hey, we have a film in Japanese anime, oh, they want to watch it. You don't even know what it's about, but because it's anime, they're interested. So just a couple heads up on that. I will say that it's not just the app. However, it's a platform and an API which allows us then to share all this content with anybody. And I might say that if any of you want to use any of this content in your own situation, you're welcome to form a partnership with us, and we can share with you any of that content on any of your stuff. For example, this is on YouVersion, it's on Colo Africa, Colo World, on other apps, you know, around the world. So that was the idea, was to make this all available freely to anybody who wants to use it.
I'm Kirk. I just want to give a shout out as well to the fact that one of the biggest frustrations is finding media content at times, and particularly in minority languages. And you know, my hat's off to you guys for putting together and hosting a lot of the minority content language. We've also, over this last year, since EMDC of last year in Thailand, have put together what's known as the Gospel Media Hub. And it is a website that you can go search, which indexes currently 20 different organizations' content. And we have a backlog list of about 150 that lists it by language, by type of content, whether it's text, video, audio, etc. And so you can go in by country, you can go in by language group specific, or by you know, the ROD code for dialects, and pull up what content is available, and it'll give you hot links to those locations and those organizations that are hosting that content. So that's the Gospel Media Hub. Indigitube is, not Indigitube, yeah. Indigitus, thank you, is hosting a sample of that on their website. There's an API for it and a WordPress plugin that you can actually use to put in your material as well on any of your websites if you want to allow people to look for other content on their languages.
Jim, did you have something to add?
Okay, while I'm walking over here, if we don't have time to give everybody a chance at the mic, make sure you share your link for your suggested tools in the Slack channel for the 2017 workshops. So it's easier for us to find it.
Let me say, too, that Dave and Wendy, Allison, and myself, we are not rushing out here at 4:30. So we will be around after the MMF and for dinner if anybody would like to talk further. Jim?
Two things I forgot. Salvation Army also has a wonderful website with a lot of social media on it that you might want to check out. They have a lot of very interesting stuff that deals with social issues. So just a heads up. The other thing I forgot to mention on the Jesus Film app, we also have a number of follow-up films. One for India, which features one of the most well-known Indian people. When I was talking to some of my friends from India, they were saying, yeah, everybody knows this guy. And that's a cultural kind of a follow-up. And then one called Rivka for the Middle East, and then one for Africa called Walking with Jesus Africa. Frankly, when we started showing those after the Jesus film, the response rate has gone up 40 to 50%. I just had a guy tell me they showed the Walking with Jesus Africa in a country in Africa in a Muslim university. He said it opened the whole university, and he said 500 Muslim students said they wanted to follow Jesus after watching the film. When they showed Rivka in one of the Stan countries, in 3 months, 1,500 Muslim women said they wanted to follow Christ, and they started 30 groups. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a great impact with these follow-up films, because it does what I call follow-through evangelism, helping people really understand how to walk with Jesus on a regular basis. So just a heads
Well,
up on
folks, I
that.
think we're out of time here, if I'm not mistaken. So let me just say this. Clyde Tabor, Jim Green, Calvin and Carol Conkey, Dave and Wendy, Steve and Allison, we all would like to invite you next year to take part with us in the Visual Media Strategy Forum to discuss how we can get more of this content made for these people groups worldwide, immediately following the EMDC, which will be taking place in Chiang Mai, Thailand, which is a lovely place. I've lived there. Here are the dates. Please see us for more information, and thanks for having us here today.